I wonder if we might transition to you, Janet, to keep going and perhaps get Jo to rejoin us when technology allows. Will that work for our tech people? Will that work for you? All right, lovely. So we'll hand over to Janet and hopefully have Josephine back shortly. Thanks. This is made for tall people.
It is, yes. Second. Oh, excellent. Okay, first test passed. Okay, hello everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, the traditional custodians of this land. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and I warmly welcome any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today, and welcome to you all. I apologise for the glasses on the nose. It's a very archives and record and librarian kind of look, but unfortunately I don't have bifocals yet. I completed a management and leadership course this year at the City of Sydney, and one of the tasks we were assigned was to write a letter, not to our future selves, as is normally the case, but from our future selves. So in the letter, our future self, who is 5 years in the future to be precise, needs to explain the key things that we've achieved in those 5 years. So it's an interesting exercise and highlights the need to have a direction to commit to and a plan of how to get there. So I thought I'd take up the challenge in this paper and consider what we imagined for the City Archives in the next 5 years. But first, let me give you a brief summary of our past and present for some context. So the City of Sydney is the second oldest council in Australia, commencing in 1842. In case you're interested, we were just pipped at the post by Adelaide in 1841. Our local government area has changed over time, but currently covers 27 square kilometres. So it's the CBD, but also a number of surrounding suburbs. The City Archives has existed since 1976, inheriting the extensive collection from the Town Clerk's Department. We're a business archive of council, but we're also a collecting archive. So we acquire archives from the community, primarily focused on the Sydney local government area. We have 12,500 shelf metres of physical archives, as well as some digital content. A key part of our role involves responding to 4,000 to 5,000 requests for information each year. We also receive about 1,000 visitors a year to our reading room at Town Hall House to view hard copy information by appointment. We have about... What? Oh, okay, right. We have about 35 volunteers who do item level description of our archives. And an active digitisation program means that we're continually adding to our collection. So the last 5 years has been packed with adventure as we've implemented a new archives management system. So prior to the new system, we were trying to control our archives using 13 different systems. Some were close to extinction, others were not publicly accessible, and most did not support digital objects. So in 2017, we commenced the move to Recollect, which includes an archives management system and a public user portal. We implemented a user-centred design approach to configure it to our needs. So the project involved migrating over 1 million item descriptions and 450,000 digital objects. And that in itself took about 9 months. The new system is called the Archives and History Resources Catalogue. And yeah, I have got it on my slide. You can see it at archives.cityofsydney.nsw.gov.au. It went live in February of 2020, which luckily for us was 6 weeks before the first COVID lockdown in Sydney. The system was accompanied by massive policy and process review, which effectively changed the nature of working in my team. New procedures, access directions, risk assessments, A development program for archive staff and a staff and community engagement strategy had supported the changes. Now, I'm very pleased to say that the project and the catalogue have been highly successful, winning multiple awards. What is more important is that it's been embraced by the community. We now have on average 11,000 users a month and 130,000 page views a month, which is a massive increase on our previous use. In fact, our main system was getting only about 1,000 hits a year prior to this, so massive increase. So it has been an extremely intense 5 years. But where to next? Well, much of our time over the next 5 years will be taken up continuing our core operational tasks, managing the system, providing access, processing transfers and donations, liaising with the business to plug gaps, which are now very obvious, now everything's online, and managing our digitisation, volunteer and community engagement programs. Today, though, I want to use the very short time I've got available to me to talk about 3 new initiatives. While I would love to say that our system work is done now, implementing a system is only ever the start of a journey. And I really hate that word about a journey, but that's what it is. So I would like my future self to be proud that we continue to take a user focus for our system and our collection improvements. In particular, I want to ensure changes are based on a sound and regular analysis of our metrics. So when we implemented the catalogue, we connected to both Microsoft Power BI and Google Analytics to improve reporting and business intelligence. Google Analytics allows us to obtain a number of important insights about our users. For example, we collect monthly statistics on the number of users, sessions and page views. We can even drill in to get a sense of their country, age and gender. For example, we learn that our highest users are consistently in the 25 to 34-year-old age group. And this really defied our expectation. The analytics can help us to tweak our existing design decisions. So as an example, this is a snapshot from our homepage, and where you can find several collection tiles in the Browse by Collection section there, arranged according to expected use. So using Google Analytics, we can review their popularity and make user-driven decisions regarding which tiles remain on the homepage and in what order, or whether other parts of the collection should be highlighted on the homepage. So originally, the villages and suburbs tile that you can see in the second line was quite low in the order of collection tiles. It's a curated collection, curated by our archivists, and consists of photographs, letters, maps, plans, series and sub-collections relating to particular suburbs and localities in our LGA. So that has proven to be incredibly popular, which reinforces that idea that a lot of people are interested in place. So we've elevated it to a higher position on our homepage. So we aim to review and act on our Google Analytics data at least once a year. Our Power BI solution can also help us to analyse our collection, plug gaps and improve offerings. Up to 1 gigabyte of selected data is refreshed weekly into the city's data lake, which is soon to be an enterprise data platform. From there, we can manipulate it into a Power BI report to get the information that we need. So we can see a breakdown of our collection, or we can select certain series to see a breakdown of items, consignments and boxes within the series, but also the number of digital assets, what formats are in the series, and what system templates have been used. This is useful in a number of ways. For example, we don't have a lot of audio-visual material in our collection, but we can drill into the format information, as I've done on this slide, to see what we have and in which series, and this can help us to know what needs to be converted to new formats as part of preservation strategies. This view also reveals some processing problems. It tells us that there are actually no box or consignment relationships for these 211 videos. So we'll need to establish those relationships. They're also on the item template in our system where they should be for best display on the video template. Through Power BI, we can link directly to the videos in our catalogue to see what the issues are and to fix them. And we've never had this kind of insight into our collection before. Power BI also gives us the opportunity to make some robust decisions on areas like cataloguing, conservation and digitisation. However, we've never collected metadata about those things in the past. So we've started adding that metadata at series level, but you can see by the light blue segments on this slide that we have more to add in the next few years. So what I hope to see in 5 years is that we have enough enhanced metadata that when we have a digitisation budget, we can look at the series that are category 1 for digitisation priority to select the most appropriate. Or we can look at all the items with high priority conservation needs and plan to allocate our budget to the areas that need it most. And if we've got spare human resources, we can look at the highest cataloguing priorities. So another project that really excites me is looking at the value and insights we can derive from 2 of our bigger archival data sets. So I'd be happy if my future self can tell me that these were released and of great value to the community. So a number of years ago, our volunteers transcribed key information found in one of our most valuable archival series, the assessment books. Council sent out officers every 3 to 5 years between 1845 and 1948 to assess every property subject to rates within our local government area so that it could calculate what rates to charge. So assessment books are the records that they created during that process and provide many details, including address, ratepayer's name, owner's name, material used, number of floors, etc. The transcripts are available in our new system, and we recently released the data set of about 500,000 rows on the city's open data portal. Another larger data set that we work with every day is the SANS Postal Directory. Now, some of you who are from New South Wales are probably familiar with the SANS directories. John Sands was a printer and stationer, and he published it from 1858 through to 1933, so there's 68 volumes. And the SANS directory covers all of Sydney, but also all of New South Wales. So the City of Sydney has a complete digital edition copied from the microfilm. However, due to the varying quality of the images, the optical character recognition has always been a problem for searchers, so you get about 60% accuracy. So we considered redigitising these volumes, but it was cost prohibitive. So we started thinking that structuring this information into columns in a spreadsheet would allow us to manipulate and visualise this data too. Now, this is a big undertaking. These are huge volumes. But as our archive is focused on the local government area, we've scoped the project to just include the parts of SANS dealing with the city streets and the suburbs in our LGA. So we spoke to our internal data experts to shore up the structure of the proposed data set to yield the best results. SANS provides details like the year, surname, initial or first name, pre and post nominals of the person, profession, property address and business name. And it also provides the street section and cross streets, which can be really valuable prior to street numbering or where that has changed. We're also inferring gender from the first names and the pre-nominals where that's possible. It's not always possible. Our digital volunteers are gradually working through these volumes at 10-year intervals. And once they're done, it should be much faster to fill in the intervening years as much of the information doesn't change dramatically. Altogether, there could be 1.5 to 2 million rows in this data set. Now, there will be considerable cleanup required. Unfortunately, the collectors of the SANS data didn't use pick lists for fields like profession. As this screenshot from the 1880 collection shows, there is a lot of variation. When we have a representative set, we're going to be seeking to connect with data experts again to determine the best ways of streamlining the data while keeping the original set. So then we're going to explore the possibilities for integration, interpretation and data visualisation of both sets together to bring new insights about our local government area. For example, you could potentially obtain a graphic of the number of stories on houses in a suburb, or the concentration of professions in certain geographical areas and how this changed over time. Or you could visualise how many women were managing businesses or owning property. Just to give you an interesting snapshot, we've completed 1858 and 1880 from the SANS directory, and they show an increase in the number of women listed and women in occupations, keeping in mind that these are only the ones that are definitely identified as women. By 1880, there were nearly 1,000 women listed with professions in the city area. Many are vocations you would expect: running boarding houses, clothing or hat making or working in drapery shops, managing food-oriented businesses like grocery shops, bakeries, confectionaries or fruiterers, teaching school, dancing or music, nursing or midwifery. However, there are some women starting to stray into male-dominated professions. Some are quite unique as well. For example, in both sets, we have at least one female phrenologist. And in the 1880, we also have a female taxidermist. And the final key achievement that I want to mention today is that I'm hoping my future self can increase the representation of diverse groups in the City Archives, which of course is a very relevant theme to this conference. Our existing collection mainly reflects past council activities and archival selection practices, and both have not always been focused on the inclusion of some diverse groups. As an example, while there have always been Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our local government area, if you looked at our archival collection, you would not easily find them. 19th century records in particular are largely silent about their existence and their contribution to the community. That's not to say we don't have records of First Nations people. We do. But often there's limited or no descriptive metadata to identify them, and many sources are undigitised or handwritten, so searches in the catalogue won't necessarily locate them. Or more recent records regarding the city's interaction with First Nations people are still in council systems and have not been transferred to archives. So we are really at the start of this process, but we have developed a number of actions in liaison with our Indigenous Leadership and Engagement team and our Indigenous Advisory Panel at the City, and in line with principles for Indigenous cultural and intellectual property rights. These provide us with standards for the acquisition, use, management and display of the material. This year, we painstakingly identified previously untagged content and released a tile on our homepage that contains select items to showcase and celebrate the involvement of First Nations communities in our LGA. We developed specific metadata, including cultural and ethical statements to encourage sensitive handling. And I must admit, we ruthlessly and shamelessly stole that cultural and ethical statement from a New Zealand site, which is very good on its management of Maori material. We're also going to be working with business areas in council who collect information about First Nations communities to ensure that the material that comes to archives has, where possible, free prior informed consent at the time that it's created, including the authority for that information to be transferred and made available in archives. And for another example about diversity, the City of Sydney is home to a large LGBTIQA+ community. So we're working to represent this in the archives as well. The City Archives purchased the Seymour Hardy photograph collection several years ago, which documents the queer scene, including the gay and lesbian Mardi Gras. It is going to be central to an exhibition at Customs House for Sydney World Pride in February of 2023. A current focus is to describe and selectively digitise photographs from the Sydney Star Observer stock photograph library, which was donated to the City Archives in 2011. The Star Observer is a gay and lesbian magazine that has existed since the late 1970s. It documents Sydney's queer community at a crucial time, including the social scene, the protests and the AIDS epidemic. This collection is complex, with numerous copyright, privacy and ethical considerations, which would make for another detailed conference paper. So next year perhaps. So in conclusion, my future self is pretty exhausted right now. We would have continued with all of our business as usual activities and hopefully with some careful planning. In the intervening years, we would have used our metrics wisely to retain a customer focus, enabled new insights from our archival datasets and worked to diversify our collection so that we can continue to grow in relevance to the business and the community. Thank you.
Excuse me clambering over the furniture here. Does anyone have any questions for Janet before we resume normal operations? We've got a couple of minutes. We've got one online, have we? Two online questions.
So I have one here from Andre. Just bear with me 1 second. Janet, you mentioned that metadata enrichment that enabled more granular reporting was done at the series level. What difficulties were faced in standardising the arrangement and description of the record series?
Okay, so yes, we have done metadata at series level. So that was more enhancing it with the digitisation priorities, cataloguing priorities and priorities on conservation. But we have done quite a lot of work in enhancing our metadata in general as well. Item level description in our archive prior was pretty minimal. There are about 5 fields in our previous system. It didn't even have a description field. So you would find that titles were extremely long because they try to fill it in, all the descriptive information in that. When we moved to the new system, Recollect actually allows you unlimited metadata, which can be a little bit dangerous, let me say. You can get too many fields, but you can also add fields as you go. So we developed some metadata standards based on archival metadata standards and looking at those closely and deciding what it was that we felt we needed for our collection. And we have quite a lot of work to do going from 5 fields to what now is, at last count, about 35, maybe close to 40 now, for items as well. So some of those fields are not relevant for all items. We have the same standard set for any type of item, but it does require a lot more metadata. So we're gradually working on enhancing that metadata as well.
I do have another question here. It's from Deb. She wanted to clarify if you've replaced all 11 previous systems with Recollect, and are you using Recollect for all archival management practices?
So it was 13 systems, not 11. But one of those systems was our Trim content manager. We still call it Trim. So no, we haven't replaced that one, but we did a transfer from Trim into the collection of about 100,000 files as part of our, before we went live. We have replaced all of the other systems now. My manager's nodding over here. Yes, it took a little bit longer. At Go Live, we hadn't replaced one or two, but now we have actually managed to work through them all and replace all of the other systems. So that was a bit of a challenge in terms of helping our public to understand from moving from the systems that were live that suddenly were gone and we had this new system. And that's one of the reasons that we use the collection tiles, that certain of those systems that were available to the public, you've now got a collection tile so that you could still find that information. So, for example, the Historical Atlas of Sydney is a tile of maps. A tile of maps, key maps in our collection. So we've just created a tile and built it within the new system so that people get the same user experience.
Any questions in the room? While you're all... Oh, sorry, one here. Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering, as a bit of a data nerd, with Microsoft Power BI, is that actually a module you're connecting into Recollect, or is that somehow running separately?
No, it's running separately. So we actually extract a gigabyte of data weekly, and then that comes out in the Power BI report for us to have a look at.
I also had a data-y kind of question that I might put in there. So there's a flip between, in some respects, between managing archives and records and managing data, and it seems like you're having conversations with new people, and I'm just wondering if you've got any observations on how that is different for the team, suddenly working in that data sharing space rather than sort of a more traditional archives and records conversation.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky in that regard, that we have a data team at the city and they're under the same umbrella as us. I love the structure we have at the city because we have data and information services is our business unit. So we're connected with the spatial people who do the mapping, we're connected with the data people, and all the information services sit within that team as well. And we report directly through our manager to the director. So it is an excellent business structure. We used to be in IT, which did not work so well for us. But luckily enough, we have a data team who understand information. Or at least when they don't understand, they're quite willing to listen to us about information management. So working together has actually been fairly seamless, both with them and the spatial team, who've helped us immensely in trying to build in some geospatial information into our system. So yes, we are moving into the data sphere in a way. We're actually really not sure quite how far we'll go with this. That's still something to come. I mean, it's interesting, that whole role of what archivists do in terms of big data sets. Like, certainly we are the ones who know what we've got, and a lot of people don't know what we've got. So that's something that it's our job, I feel, to bring that forward. As we were talking in the climate change meeting yesterday, but how much we actually look at visualising that data and how much we provide the data set for other people to visualise is probably dependent on the organisation. We want to try it, so we might have a go and see how it goes.
I think that's probably about time for our questions now, unless someone had anything really burning that will make Janet climb back up on the stage. Right, let me switch microphone. So look, thanks so much for that, Janet. I did find that fascinating.